I'm David Flynn from ACM. There's a story that in the early 70s, while driving on a lonely road, Prince Philip and a friend came across a Morris Minor stuck in a ditch. The two female teachers looked on in amazement as Prince Philip and the friend lifted the car back onto the road. The London Telegraph recently mentioned the story that on the eve of his wedding in 1947, Prince Philip was stopped for speeding near Buckingham Palace. "Sorry," he said, "but I've got an appointment with the Archbishop of Canterbury." The policeman, rather astounded, let him off with a warning. That, said the Telegraph, one of London's more responsible newspapers, has just paid a very substantial sum in damages to the First Lady, Melania Trump, for seriously and unjustifiably defaming her. Now, I'm not suggesting the story about Prince Philip is defamatory, but if there's one thing I learned in the referendum, it's that it's not unreasonable to approach press stories with the proverbial grain of salt. Now, there was a time whenever they were reporting on Prince Philip that lazy British journalists on certain newspapers, not the Telegraph, would go on to autopilot. They'd bring out the standard, tired old line about the Prince's latest gaffe. This is based on the sort of banter sailors in the Navy engage. In fact, men do everywhere. Women are usually more subtle. Philip clearly did it to put people at their ease. And most people liked it. They were amused as intended, and it certainly put them at their ease. But once this occurred at some or other event, some journalist would ask them what the Prince had said. And whatever he had said, the journalist would turn that, like a machine, into a gaffe. So we got a continuous story about the Prince's latest gaffe, based all on banter to put people at ease. Thus, when the Prince had asked some Aboriginal men in Australia holding spears whether they still threw those things at one another, it was clearly a joke to put them at their ease, which it did. But it became a gaffe of monumental proportions. That's lazy journalism, formulaic journalism. Don't worry about the facts. Don't worry that the person was not in the slightest upset. Just report it as yet another gaffe by Prince Philip. And the journalist's name would appear on all the reports which then circled the globe about the Prince's latest gaffe. As Donald Trump puts it, fake news. Well, back to the accident near Sandringham on the 17th of January. As the Daily Mail reports, the Duke escaped uninjured when his Land Rover hit an oncoming Kia after being, as he said, dazzled by the sun. It left the mother of two driving the Kia with minor injuries and a passenger with a broken wrist. Fortunately, Ms. Townsend's 9-month-old baby boy was uninjured. The Duke's Land Rover flipped over, leaving the Duke trapped. He had to be rescued through the sunroof by a passing motorist. He wrote a letter apologizing. Later, a statement was issued from Buckingham Palace, which said, "After careful consideration, the Duke of Edinburgh has taken the decision to voluntarily surrender his driving license." Much had been made in the media about the age of the Duke, 97. But at his age, apparently there are over 100,000 people, either in the UK or England, I can't work that out, who are over the age of 90, and they've all got valid licenses. That's over 100,000 people. And there are actually 248 people who are over 100 who have a license. Anyway, the investigation undertaken by the Crown Prosecutor Service in the east of England has now been concluded. And Chris Long, speaking for the CPS, said they had carefully reviewed material submitted by the police in relation to the accident. We took into account all the circumstances in the case, including the level of culpability, the age of the driver, and the surrender of the driving license. We have decided that it would not be in the public interest to prosecute. All those involved in the collision have been informed and provided with a full explanation in writing. Note, the decision was made after considering all the evidence submitted by the police and in accordance with a two-stage test used in the Code for Crown prosecutors. Now, the Duke himself had apologized both orally and in writing. And as you would know, it's most unusual for a person involved in an accident to apologize in writing before the decision is taken whether or not to prosecute, and perhaps more importantly, or just as importantly, before any civil case. In fact, it's often a condition of an insurance policy not to make any admissions. The Prince was in no way trying to avoid the consequences of the accident. Otherwise, he wouldn't have written the apology. The decision by the CPS is proper. It was predictable in many ways, and in my opinion would have been similar whoever was involved. This will not, of course, stop the usual bitter royal haters and extreme Republicans from attacking him and suggesting that somehow he had received special treatment. He has not. But isn't it wonderful that in a free society, our constitutional monarchy ensures that even the Queen's consort is not above criticism, however unfair and indeed rabid. Until next time, I'm David Flint from Australians for Constitutional Monarchy.